Let's get some reaction to what was a very, very interesting day in local politics. And still on that story, Action SA blaming the DA, that's right, her own party, for the fall of Mpho Phalatse as the Joburg mayor. Just to remind you of the numbers, she was voted out with 140 votes in favour of a motion of no confidence against her. Well, let's get the thoughts then of Action SA Gauteng Chair Bongani Baloyi. Mr. Baloyi, good morning to you. Appreciate your time so early on Friday morning. And here we are again. Another mayor has been ousted. Now we're going to get to who should be coming in next. Let me ask you, and let's begin here though. What do you think really happened to Mpho Phalatse?
Look, what happened to Mpho Phalatse is the DA intended for the situation to land up where it got last night, where Mpho Phalatse was elected out of office, because last week Thursday there was a deal that the PA had agreed to, which the deal was part of the negotiating team from the coalition parties. That deal was enabled by Action SA making the ultimate sacrifice of 2 out of 3 positions it has in the mayoral committee, where we're prepared to offer those positions to the PA, which would have been the Department of Transport, the Department of Economic Development, which we currently held then. And the DA declined having PA take the Department of Economic Development. And their reasons were that the PA had previously held those positions and there was some malfeasance in the past term by the PA, and there's lots of corruption that happened. And we said as the party, I mean, they can't make loose allegations on the PA and claim to be corrupt or claim the PA to be corrupt. Meanwhile, they are still prepared for the PA to take a department which in terms of an annual budget is much bigger. I mean, transport is 7.7 billion rands and economic development is just under 1 billion rand. So it did not make sense to us why they would decline it, and still, while they claim the PA is corrupt, still want them to be part of a coalition. And secondly, give them a budget, the department with a higher budget. So the DA just frustrated the negotiations at all times. I mean, their FedEx was really impossible. Keep changing the terms of the deal while the deal was arranged. I think that's why we're in this situation where Mpho yesterday was voted out. And I think for Action SA, it was unfortunate that happened. We voted with the motion against, so we voted with Mpho Phalatse yesterday. However, it was a spent force because we did not have majority. And coalitions without majority is unsustainable.
So I just want to be very clear, and it's only bringing it up now because during the build-up to yesterday's press conference, yesterday morning, Bongani, I'm sure that the now former mayor had a press conference on the load-shedding solutions for Joburg. One of the questions posed to Mpho Phalatse was the relationship with John Steenhuisen and the DA. And then go a few hours later, there's talk of the DA having not supported Mpho Phalatse. Is that factually correct to your mind? Was it a case of the DA not supporting Mpho Phalatse, or they weren't supporting the coalition and she was simply shrapnel in all the carnage? Which one is it?
Look, I think they were quite clever in how they did that. They ensured that the multi-party government collapsed. If the multi-party government collapses and Mpho Phalatse ceases to be mayor and loses a very important platform where she can demonstrate leadership and show people that potentially the DA could be led by someone different and someone who's capable and someone who brings an enormous amount of wealth of experience from a professional and public service background. And I really think going into an election, into an election season in the DA, it's exactly the type of advantage Mr. Steenhuisen would not want a possible opponent to have over him. So I think they were quite intentional about what they did. They were very ruthless about what they did. And for us, it's unfortunate because ultimately the people who will pay for this decision is the citizens of Johannesburg, because they suffered the internal political squabbles of the DA as a consequence. And the coalition bloc was really used and abused by the DA to further this objective of theirs.
I'm going to ask this, and I'm going to ask you to go back a little while as well. You're a former DA member, of course, as well. So I'm going to ask you to move from green for the moment. I understand you're with Action SA now. Go back to the days of the DA and blue. So what you're telling me now, is that coming from what you witnessed personally within the DA and you're seeing it play out now again? Is that where this view is coming from?
Well, I did not experience it. I am not a victim of anything from the DA. I led and I left on my own terms. And I left a good record and a sustainable, financially viable municipality. But this, what is happening now, happened to Herman Mashaba. It's history repeating itself.
Let's look ahead to today then. Because I don't want to get stuck on the politics of this, because there's still a city to govern, Bongani. So we can go around in circles all day about what the DA did or didn't do, or the coalition did or didn't do. The point is, right now, once again, as a city, Joburg doesn't have a leader. So let's take a look at the options for leadership today. And many people are going to not be surprised necessarily, but we're seeing Mpho Phalatse putting up her hand for what's going to be a third run at this, but also Al-Jamal's Tapelo Ahmed and even Action SA's Funzi Ngobeni that I'm seeing. So obviously you're going to tell me you want Funzi to win this. What's the play here? How do you do this in a coalition government? How do you make sure your person gets to the top seat?
Look, I think it's important firstly to confirm that at this point in time in the city of Johannesburg, there is no longer a coalition. There's nothing to coalesce around, and we lost the seat of executive mayor and therefore the executive, which subsequently then meant there's no coalition. So it means all parties are operating on their individual basis. We intend to put our own candidate. We will not support the DA in this case, because the DA is the reason we got to this place in the first place. So we will even lobby them to consider supporting us. We've been a loyal supporter to them, even though they've been frustrating us along the path. So we continue to lobby other parties. We have not spoken to the ANC. We have not spoken to the EFF. We have not spoken to other parties. We tried to engage PA yesterday. They told us under no certain terms that they will vote for us because of an agreement with the ANC bloc. So we're trying to get other parties as well to move towards us. But we'll do our best. And in the event we lose, we'll concede defeat. We'll move back to the opposition benches. We'll be a formidable opposition party holding the government and the coalition to account. And we'll offer our assistance where we can to ensure that there's a smooth transfer of power and there's a handover reports given in departments where we were. Our team is ready to do that to ensure that there's smooth transfer of power and continuity of the good work that we've done. So we understand at that point we need to support whoever will be elected in the event we do lose, because we need to ensure that it's about the residents who need the services and who rely on government in the city of Johannesburg.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Was once again, here we are sitting and talking about Johannesburg Council. We're not talking about Johannesburg services and residents getting what they pay for. Bongani, I'm going to ask you this final question as well, just as we look at let's call it what it is. It's been messy in Joburg Council on a number of occasions now. This doesn't bode well, to my mind, for national elections next year, where there is talk. I know right now you're saying it's neutral ground, there's no current coalition. We will see a coalition of some kind in Joburg again, probably in the next few hours. If this is what the country is preparing for in national elections, a coalition national government, I'm terrified what that could mean for our country if this is what it looks like just in a small area like Johannesburg.
Look, not just a small area. Johannesburg is the biggest metro in the country, carrying a very significant budget. It scares me as well when I think about the prospect of 2024 and the prospect of having a new president every 6 months scares me. But I think it's important that the lawmakers in parliament think about ways to mitigate this through laws that would prevent any of the sudden shifts or sporadic shifts and sustained instability in government. It's not a good thing for anybody. So we need to find the mechanisms to ensure government can do its business and insulate public civil servants from politics and ensure that the civil servants are able to continue with the business of the day when politics fail. And I really think country will find the mechanisms to deal with this, because I suspect that this will be a regular occurrence, which instability creates an environment where you can't plan, you can't deliver for services, you can't think long-term in a strategic way and be able to pursue that agenda. So we are really in trouble if this is going to be the persistent and dominant phase of coalitions, because it does not assist us in building confidence from the ratepayers or the citizens of the country that politicians will find a mechanism or ways to deal with the issue of instability. And from where I stand as well, I'm equally frightened by that prospect, and I really hope we can build in the mechanisms to find a way to ensure that there's stability.
I certainly hope so, and quite right. I didn't mean Joburg as in a small area. I mean comparatively geographically to the rest of South Africa and running a country. But quite right, it is, of course, the biggest metro, biggest budgets to deal with. But it's not a good example of what coalitions look like. But Bongani, I'm going to say thank you very much. I'm sure we'll talk to either Bongani or someone from Action SA again later in the day and other political parties. Yes, we'll continue to get reaction from the DA and various parties around Gauteng to try and find out what happened. Even though we can't change that now, what happened to try not to repeat that mistake, and what the plans are for Johannesburg going forward. We can't just keep on electing new leaders. At some point, the work actually has to get